Good morning, RWorld. Welcome back to another episode of RWorld Talk. We have Lesilie Deutch with us this morning from John Burns Research and Consulting. She is the managing principal, and she's got a ton of information to share with you all today. So welcome, Lesilie.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
I'm glad that you made it in. I know that we both went through a heck of a lot of traffic this morning. So you guys are listening in, and it took us a lot of work to get here today. So pay attention to what's going on. Lesilie, you've got over 25 years of experience consulting across multiple industries. Can you walk us through how you got started in real estate and sort of what led you to focus on this field?
Sure. So I started my career actually on Wall Street. So I started working on Wall Street, and I did that for about 10 years. I kind of fell into to research side. I was a commercial real estate, and I did all of the background research for all of the banks.
Okay.
So think about, if the banks are lending money, if they're private equity groups within the banks are loaning money. I did all of the background research. So my whole life, all 25 years, probably a little bit more, but I'll stick at 25, has been real estate research. I moved down here. I'm a Floridian. I'm born and raised in Florida.
Okay.
So after New York, I moved down back to Florida and started working still with the same firms in commercial real estate. And then I met John Burns through conferences through the industry.
Okay.
And it was 2009, and it was a really tough year for real estate, if anyone remembers that year. But he was working with the distressed investors, and he was based in California, and there was 10 people in the California firm. And he said, I need your help. I need your knowledge of Florida and of the East Coast. So I joined him. I did not know residential at the time. That was 16 years ago. But I built up a business here, and ever since then, we've been going strong. We've got 160 people in our company now,
Okay.
All geographically spread across the country. So I've been managing a lot of the geographic expansion of the company. So started really my whole career, real estate research, but and all different aspects of it.
So you know a couple of things about real estate.
Yes.
It's
So
25 years of real estate research. My goodness. And you have done a lot of work for us, speaking at the commercial symposiums that we have. Zach Nyberg, who's a member of your team.
Yes.
We had him on the podcast last year. He also spoke for us at the commercial symposium. And my goodness, you guys have just like an incredible wealth of information that you share with us. So thank you so much for that.
I enjoy it.
Really helps our real estate community. Obviously, you've worked across a wide range of sectors, from high-rise development, going back to the commercial side, now into even single-family rentals, doing research there. What is that variety from the commercial side to the residential side? What's that taught you about the evolving real estate landscape that we're seeing?
So I think it's been the best part of my career that I get to delve into all those different types of real estate sectors. Because really, sometimes it's not about the real estate itself, but it's about the people and how they live.
Sure.
So people like to live in rentals. They like to live in large houses and small houses. They can only afford certain things, or where they shop, right? So understanding, so the basis of everything I do is understanding the people and understanding the demographics behind it. So
If they open up a new Brightline station, that's going to change.
it's going to change things, right? You need affordable housing. So I've done some affordable housing. You have people that buy second and third homes. You need luxury high rises. So being able to first start with the people and then kind of go from there, real estate falls into that if you kind of follow the whole pattern there. So it's been great. And to be able to know where the new homes are going is where the new retail, where the rooftops going, where is the apartment developers have typically looked into urban areas, and they're moving out to the suburbs now. And we know the suburbs, and that's where people live. So,
Sure.
and especially with technology, you can live anywhere now. So it's really been a fun time. I would say I'm still learning every day. Still starting some new sectors. Who would have thought built to rent, single family rental
Right.
would have been a new sector? But yes, we're moving along.
Yeah, and that's certainly a sector that really took off in the last couple of years. I mean, I see it in my own community. All these new buildings, you see the sign go up, and it's like, oh, I've got to see what that project is about. And it turns out that project is not for sale. That's a new rental community that's going in.
Right. I think the sector has tremendous fundamentals. It's still in its infancy, if you will, right? There's still a lot of growth there, but there's a lot of people that don't want the maintenance of a home, and they can now live in a home and have somebody else maintain it and fix their ice machine and their dishwasher when there's problems. So there's a big, strong fundamentals underlying that, and I think it's going to continue for sure.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of our customers now that are coming from those sort of high-end rental communities that are now going in to buy their first home, I remember when I bought my first home, let's buy a, fixer upper and go in and get it cheap,
Brave.
do all this work. And now we see that there's a major trend where most of the buyers that we see come into looking for any sort of a property, you go and take them for a walk through and they're like, no, I need something that's turnkey.
Yeah.
It seems like that new generation really wants to be completely hands off with their home ownership and have everything that's already been done. It's perfectly maintained or newly built and things like that.
Well, a lot of that has to do with where they lived when they were young, right? The rentals have really stepped up their game. Class A rentals are now, granite countertops, stone countertops, and really, really nice and perfect amenities. And when people move out of that, they don't want to start fixing up something else. They're looking for something that they're comfortable with.
Yeah, exactly. So what kind of trends are you currently seeing right now in the real estate market that realtors should pay attention to, especially here in South Florida?
Yeah, so you invited me in a very tough time in the market. It's definitely challenging. No, look, I think you have to remember that fundamentally people are still moving to Florida. They still want to be here. I truly believe the biggest problem in our market right now is affordability, and it all evolves around that, right? The mortgage rates are over 7. The home prices have gone up 20% plus at least over the last couple of years.
Yep.
And it's an affordability problem. So, and not only that, the market is sort of shut down. The resale market, the listings are going up. So I do believe, and the company that I work for believes this is temporary. This is a 2025 issue.
Okay.
We're going to start seeing mortgage rates fall, which will help everything. It'll help people get into new homes. It'll help the resale market move again. Because who wants to buy a home? Who wants to sell their home? Can't sell your home and then buy one at a 7% mortgage rate. So a little bit of a challenging market. I would say some of the bright spots are the new homes because the new builders are able to buy down the mortgage rates. So they can't. So the resale market is having a hard time competing.
Sure.
So one of the things I think there's a big opportunity there is to focus on the new home in this current environment. Focus on the new home projects because they're the ones that can buy down the rates to, most of them are buying them down to in the mid 4s, high 4s right now.
Which is a fantastic interest rate.
Right. So that's driving new home sales. And that's driving really all home sales at this point. But there is uncertainty in the market and there's definitely, it's all comes back to affordability.
So I read a stat just this morning that the Bowtie economist put out. And he had said that 10% of all listings have been pulled from the market, that sellers are basically taking a pause because they're not getting the number that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And that should have a little bit of an anti-inflationary effect. Do you see that could be a potential there?
Yeah, we watch those listings really closely. The issue is very few of the sellers actually are realistic or where the market is going. Because if you look
What
at
are
this,
you talking about?
I know, but if you look at the median numbers, right, the median resale price in Palm Beach County, for example, is still going up.
Right.
Now, it shouldn't be at this point, right? There's the months of supply is I think over 10 right now. I think it's over 8. Sorry, not 10, over 8. But it's again because that's happening, people should be starting to come back down to earth, and they're not.
They're not.
So that's been a big issue. So I think you're going to need kind of a consensus view that's going to lower the prices a little bit to get it back in line. And don't forget, it's not just the price; the financing is expensive now too. And so then it goes back to that mortgage rate is that your monthly payments are really high. So that's definitely an issue right now.
Yeah, I would tell you guys that are listening right now, you see what's happening in the market. You see how long your listings are taking to sell. You see that those days on market just keep going up and up. You really need to use some research, some hard data. Sit down and have a really long talk with your sellers about where the market's going, where we're at right now, why their price is unrealistic, and really dig your heels in and don't take these $200,000 overpriced listings. Have a talk with that seller and make sure that they're very educated on what's happening with the market. And if you're not educated, talk to your broker and get some education on exactly what the hard data is revealing, because we're seeing days on market is up. The difference between list price and sales price just keeps getting a larger gap.
Right.
And it's really important to have those properties priced right. I just put a property on the market with a seller that I had a very good talk with and showed them the hard data and what's happening with the market. And they gave me a realistic price. And I think that house is actually going to sell rather quickly. Where you see everybody else in the exact same neighborhood is $200,000 and $300,000 higher for the exact same house. It's people need to come down to earth.
No,
It has changed.
and if you just look back at the last 3 years of what the price appreciation has been, it's been in the double digits consistently.
They're still making a ton of money.
And so it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to continue to see that, nor is that truly the value of your home.
Right.
So I think anyone that's lived in their home, any seller that's lived in their home for at least 5 years has made some equity on that house, but maybe it's just not quite as much as where the market is today.
Sure.
So I agree.
Yeah, we had plenty more buyers about a year and a half ago in the market, 2 years ago in the market.
Yeah.
And sellers could throw their house up for whatever number they wanted, and they would most likely get it. But it's just we're not in that climate anymore. You were talking about affordability. So we talked about the developers being able to buy down those interest rates. What sort of role do you think that realtors can play in addressing that affordability challenge, besides what I just talked about, and having the sellers really get realistic with their asking price?
Well, I think one of the things that I'm starting to see, and I'd be curious to see if realtors are starting to see it, is that people are starting to come to terms with the fact that interest rates aren't going to be 2 to 3% anymore. Ever, right? Mortgage rates. And so it's been, there is a consumer psychological aspect to it that, okay, they just shot up to 6. I'll wait till they go back to 3. Well, now they've been 6 plus for at least 2.5, 3 years. And so there is this psychological, okay, maybe it's time for me to move. Maybe it's time for me to buy.
Right.
So I think educating them that, look, we do expect mortgage rates to decline, but they'll stay in the mid 6s.
Right.
And so all of our research says right now the consumer is thinking 5.5% will make me move. Maybe you start to say, look at history. Long-term interest rates or mortgage rates have been in the 6.5%. Maybe it's just time to say this is the new normal. And this is going to have to be where we are, because we don't see it coming down that much more.
Right. This has been normal. And I think a lot of the biggest pool of buyers that we have, and I think I've said this on the show before, the biggest pool of buyers that we have are really those millennial buyers that are now in home buying age. When they were becoming adults, were seeing these 2 and 3% interest rates, not realizing that was artificially deflated. Right. That before the pandemic happened, we had rates that were in the 5s. Right. This is not something that is out of the norm, and being in the 6s is not crazy high. It just happens that we're trying to combat some of the inflation that happened because of the pandemic. So once we get things in order, we should end up back in the 5s, and that is going to be your normal interest rate that most people are going to end up paying.
Right. Yeah.
So from your consulting experience, what's one piece of advice that you can give realtors when it comes to positioning themselves as trusted advisors?
I go back to some of my own career. Know your consumer. Know who your customer is.
That's huge.
Really understand what motivates them to buy not only buy a house or sell a house, but how they live. So you need to know if you're listing a house, you need to know who's coming in the door and who's looking at it. If you go back to the millennials, right? Maybe it's an older empty nester that owns the home that's selling it to a younger person. So then work through the house and work through the showing to really understand who's buying and who's selling. Right. Because that really drives all real estate. Right now, we know a couple facts, right? We know the homes are overpriced. The market is dying for some sort of affordability. And the best competitive advantage you can have right now is really understanding who your customer is. So really spending some time there. The other piece of advice, unfortunately, if you was short-term advice, right, I would say look to the affordability. That we know that's the problem. Look to townhomes, look to smaller homes, look to St. Lucie versus Palm Beach if I have a choice, right? So kind of seek out ways of making things more affordable. That's another key thing, just at least for 2025, I would say.
So let's talk about that for a minute. You mentioned moving to Palm Beach. I think we had this talk with Zach as well, because traditionally you'd have the Miami people moving to Broward, the Broward people moving to West Palm, the West Palm people moving to St. Lucie. Now we're seeing the Miami people just jump straight up to St. Lucie or even Palm Coast.
Yes.
So what sort of trends are you seeing in that regard? Are you guys doing research in sort of where people are migrating to?
Sure. And I'm a Palm Beach County resident, so Zach is from Martin County, so we have different views on this, but the facts are the facts, right? Yep. If you look at the housing market in Palm Beach versus St. Lucie, in Palm Beach you've got 8 months of supply. Right. In St. Lucie now you have 2.5. So there is a market there, and people are moving there, and we have all this migration data that shows St. Lucie is one of the largest in-migration markets there are right now.
Right. Yes.
So
booming.
St. Lucie is booming, and it's all driven by affordability. Because if you look at some of the builders there and compare their GL Home's a great example. You compare their house in Palm Beach versus St. Lucie, there's still $300,000 benefit to live in St. Lucie, and St. Lucie has reached that point now where it's got rooftops and houses and retail and entertainment, and it's a booming place. So Palm Beach, unfortunately, their median home price right now is mid sevens.
Right.
And so is the resale. So it's very, very expensive. So you're really seeing that shift. Now, will it shift back? It's going to take some price declines and some different, some different dynamics in the market. But again, St. Lucie is a great example of what affordability and allowing new development can happen.
Sure. So let's talk for a minute about our commercial realtors that are listening. What do you see that's happening in the commercial sector? What kind of businesses are we seeing? I know medical office space 2 years ago was like insanely popular. Is still looking at medical office space being the leader? Are we looking at more tech? What's happening with commercial?
So I keep hearing over and over again, and I keep seeing it as retail has come back, which is not something you would have, expected or thought, but designing retail for more suburban areas, redesigning older retail, tearing it down and building new. There's a huge demand, and especially on the money side, on the equity side, for more retail properties.
Interesting.
So yeah, because people they're not driving as far as they used to get to the retail. Builders are building further out. Again, driven by that housing affordability. People drive 30 minutes out to buy a home. Now they want the retail and the conveniences. So
interesting.
There's been an interesting move towards the retail, which is not really what I would have predicted. But again, it does make a lot of sense because there's a lot of households. We had a lot of people move into South Florida over the last couple of years. So
if I were to pick 10 different commercial sectors that I thought that you would have said, retail absolutely would not be one of them. That's so wild.
No.
You saw like all the Macy's closing down and the JCPenney's and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it's different kind of retail, right? So it's they're taking those and redesigning them into kind of experiential, smaller retail stores, right? So there's a lot of that going on where you take a large big box, you tear it down and you build a walkable, usually outdoor lifestyle center.
Sure.
So that's been a real big booming area, which is really kind of interesting. But also look, industrial is coming back as well for all of the distribution reasons. Medical office is still there, not quite as strong as it was, but it's still an investable tool. Office is still very slow.
Interesting.
Very, very slow.
Yeah, I've got 20 years difference between myself and my sister.
Okay.
And I'm one of those people, I'm so busy that everything that I do in my life always comes from Amazon. I never go to a store if I can avoid it. I avoid it at all costs. I don't care what the experience is going to be like. Right. I'm just not doing it. And she's the exact opposite. No Amazon packages showing up at her house, but she's constantly out at these little boutique places doing her shopping. It's completely different. I think a different generation, different mindset.
Well, and also what they do is they put big green spaces out now with these smaller retail stores, and you bring your kids and you go to the ice cream store, you sit and you shop, and it's a gathering spot. So retail has become almost a park-like setting, if you will. So it has changed. It has definitely changed, and it's growing.
Okay, very cool. So going back to residential, how can realtors sort of adapt to? Well, obviously, there's a lot of volatility in the market, which we've spoken about, interest rates and affordability crisis that's happening. So they obviously want to continue to grow their business, but how do you think that they can sort of adapt to what's happening with the market?
Yeah, so I think just remember the fundamentals are really strong. So we have South Florida especially has attracted a ton of new businesses. Now, our housing market's a little unaffordable right now, and that will adjust and that will change. But again, I think the answer right now to adapt is to look a little bit more on the affordable side.
Okay.
And smaller homes, right? It's smaller homes. There's ways to strip down homes on the new home side that we've been seeing. And there's a lot of ways that you can kind of combat that affordability. But I do think fundamentally we are a very desirable place to live. We have no income taxes, right? People are still moving down here. But again, if Palm Beach doesn't adjust, there's going to be a lot of demand in St. Lucie. And St. Lucie is still a very, very strong market. And I'm starting to see builders go to other, Martin County starting to open up in terms of its demand. Vero Beach is starting to open up. So there's a lot of different markets now that are really kind of expanding out from where we are. We're a little bit land constrained, if you will.
Sure. Yeah, I think St. Lucie had the stigma about it that it was like, the retirement community in the middle of nowhere.
Not
That is
anymore.
totally not the case.
I
A
know.
lot of
I
young
know.
families moving in there,
No, it's
or
true.
just young people in general,
Right.
and lots of amenities for them to enjoy in St. Lucie now.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah,
it is.
that's something that we didn't have before. So technology.
Yes.
Obviously, technology is everywhere. That's all we hear about is what's happening with artificial intelligence and new apps and new products and all those kinds of things. But so even from virtual tours to using big data in order to analyze your customers, analyze the market, things like that, how can South Florida realtors leverage those types of tools to enhance the work that they're doing?
So I just came back actually from Vegas. I went to the Consumer Electronics Show for the first time, which, by the way, if anyone has an opportunity to do that, it's a week-long technology of the future of technology, right?
That
So
must have been fun.
I couldn't even get through all of the different booths and it was just unbelievable. But the theme of the entire show was, how can technology help make your life easier? It's not about like the autonomous vehicles are a big deal and the screens and everything, but again, using technology to make your life easier. So I think realtors can use it in a number of ways, right? So I saw more screens out there than I've ever seen, like really large screens, right? Like the TV screens that you can have pictures and you can have a famous pictures hanging up on it.
And now they're just like tiles that stick together and make this seamless.
Right. So there's ways of showing homes with additional technology that are pretty low cost. So that's one way, I think, to make people feel like their home is their sanctuary, right? And that their home understands them. But also using, I mean, we do it all the time in our work, using ChatGPT to really convey what you want to feel. People are not all prolific writers, but being able to use some of that in your listings and your emails and your conversations with clients. Like there's a lot of ways to use that technology. So
I think people need to start embracing ChatGPT, and
Yes.
a lot of times ChatGPT will spit something out, and as soon as you look at it, you're like, oh, you cheated, you used ChatGPT. But I think it would benefit everybody if you use it to sort of get the creative flow going, and then go ahead and change everything that it spit out and put it in your own words.
Right. That's how I use it all the time. I do. I mean, I write it myself and then say, can you make this sound a little bit better? Or can you make this sound a little bit, targeted towards a certain customer segment? So there's ways to utilize it because it's not going away. It's only going to become more all-encompassing. So you might as well embrace it at this point.
Put your thoughts down, throw it in the system and see what it spits out. And today you don't like it.
Exactly.
Okay. So I know that you're busy. You've got a lot to get through. Anything else that you wanted to add for the viewers on the research that you're doing? Any kind of trends that you're seeing? Anything of that nature?
No, but I will say Florida's a little bit unique than the rest of the country right now. So Florida and Texas also, their housing markets are going through a little bit of a change, if you will. It's going to be a little slower year for them, but the other markets in the country are not feeling that as nearly as much. Which leads me to believe that this market, the U.S. housing market is strong. It's just that we've had a lot of supply. We had a lot to swallow with a lot of people come in, and Texas is a very similar story.
Right.
So this is not a national phenomenon where we're very concerned with the state of the market. This is a short-term kind of absorbing our supply, absorbing the number of people, and the fundamentals are really strong, and the outlook is good.
So you touching on that just led me to another question.
Sure.
Seeing that it's Texas and Florida had the biggest in-migration throughout the pandemic. People started doing work from home and went, why am I freezing my butt off up here in New York? I'm going to go down to Florida and work from the beach or work from, patio or something. So do you think that some of that inventory that we're reabsorbing is a lot of people that are selling because they now have to go back to DC and they've got to go back to New York and Chicago and be in the office?
No, I don't think that's it. I don't. I think a lot of the inventory so Texas and Florida also had one other thing. They had the strongest price appreciation of any markets in the country.
Right.
So we benefited from the pandemic plus. So there are people that are trying to sell their home to cash out to maybe either buy a bigger home.
Okay.
And I see a lot of that happening, right? They want more space or they want to live in a different market. So there's people trying to cash out, and there's investors in Texas and Florida that don't see the price appreciation that they saw in the last couple of years, and they want to get out. Okay. So there is a little bit of that, but I think it's that massive price appreciation combined with our new homes that came into the market and the supply that's really kind of causing the trouble for us right now.
Okay, interesting. Well, you guys heard it right here, why this is all happening. Lesilie, thank you so much for being with us. One last question for you. We ask this of all the guests that are on our show. Tell us about a hidden gem in Florida that you would like to share. It could be a local dive bar, beach spot, park, restaurant, whatever it is that you love about living in Florida. And you're a native, so
I'm a native, so I feel like I should have all these great hidden gems. But truthfully, I'm also a mother of 3 kids, and so I think my hidden gem and where I spend the most time is Patch Reef Park, right in Boca Raton. So tons of fields, and the fields aren't used that often. I shouldn't say that out loud. So I have 3 athletes in my family, so we're always out there, and there's great walking trails and parks for the little kids, and it's always been a really well-run, really great park. And take a walk every single Saturday morning with my husband through the park, and so to me that is my second home, if you will.
Okay. Lesilie, if you're listening, we need a nature nurture network at Patch Reef Park.
Right.
Okay. Well, Lesilie, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having
truly
me.
a pleasure. And we look forward to seeing you at the next symposium or whatever stage you're going to be speaking on next. We'll make sure that people come out and see you because you've got a lot to share.
No, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, we'll see you guys right back here next Friday, 8 a.m. on RWorld Talk.